All right, chat, are we live? We good? Good morning. God, my glasses are fucked. All right. How are we doing today? I'm hoping with this being a later stream, more people will come in. That this will be a nice fat stream. And the subject matter is something that, you know, people tend to be a bit more interested in. Because there's been a lot of discourse lately regarding intimacy. A lot of discourse regarding intimacy, and I kind of wanted to discuss some of that stuff with you guys today. I'm gonna wait for a few more people to come in, trying to stay sober. Yeah, same. I'm gonna wait for a few more people to come in before we really start discussing things. Nice. Good morning. Just came into nice fat stream. Yeah, I'm hoping this will be a nice fat stream. But yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of like intimacy and things like that. I had something that I was like, man, I forgot to talk about it in stream yesterday, and I should talk about it in today's stream. And I totally forgot. I totally forgot what that was, and I didn't write myself a note, which is not good, because then I just forget things. But it was something I kind of wanted to bring up during stream. As you know, if you were in stream yesterday or you saw the video this morning, Bradley's bike has been stolen. I am going to go ahead and put my info in the chat because I would like to surprise him with a new bike. I think that would be a nice thing to do. Whoever stole it was very ballsy, because like, you guys have seen like my yard and stuff. Like, we are not like directly in town. We're kind of far out. Like, you would have to go quite a distance to steal a bike. What I'm assuming probably happened is that, you know, we had a midnight runner out here, and they didn't want to have to walk back down the hill when they had already walked up it, and they saw a convenient bike for them to take, which is unfortunate because Bradley does not have a driver's license. And Bradley usually works until 2 a.m., which means we can't drive Bradley back and forth. So that is Bradley's transportation to work. Because we live close enough in town that Bradley can, like, bike to work, you know. And so he desperately needs a new bike. And I'm trying to raise some money to get him one, because I think that would be a nice thing to do. All right. We got about 15 people in here. We can go ahead and start up. So, Sabrina Carpenter. Sabrina Carpenter. People are really mad at Sabrina Carpenter right now. I don't know how many of you have seen the album cover of hers that people are mad about. She is on all fours with her hair being pulled by a man in like a pretty skimpy little outfit. People are very mad at her. There's like a whole discourse going around about whether or not it's feminist. And for me, where I'm kind of at, and I feel like I can kind of talk about this because I did spend, 28 years as a girl. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I look like this now, like I have a fucking beard, sort of. Um, but yeah, so I kind of wanted to discuss this from the angle of like queerness and discourse from like the early 2000. Like Julia said, like Jules said, uh, most people are mad, don't remember media in the early 2000s or before. Yeah. Um, I think this really does come back to like prudishness. I really think what this comes down to is the prudishness. It's a problem because we are watching young lefties, queer lefties, fall into the trap of turning back the clock in a similar way to the conservatives because they are prudish. Um, Gen Z is very weird about sex. And I think some like younger millennials maybe too. Um, I don't know. There's like a weird group there. That's like younger millennial, older Gen Z. That's they kind of split down the middle. But when it comes to like the 18 to 28 demographic, there are some really weird prudish views on sexuality. I understand the discourse is important to talk about and the implications, but I don't want to hear about random celebrities. I was perfectly happy not knowing her name. Okay, so that's fine if you don't want to be involved in this stream. We are going to talk a little bit about Sabrina Carpenter because this comes back to the prudishness. We need to have a discussion about sex and sexuality, or we're going to keep having things like the Sabrina Carpenter thing happen. Um, like I understand y'all don't want to hear celebrity discourse. That's fine. You don't have to watch the stream. Um, the thing is, like, this ties into like the kink at pride discourse and stuff too, where we keep having these issues with Gen Z and their prudishness and their weird views around sex and sexuality. Um, it's a good jumping off point for the conversation. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like, what we have is a woman who is openly displaying her sexuality and desires. And I think kind of what I wanted to do, jumping off from that, was like talk more about like fantasy and how a lot of people have been engaging with fantasy. Um, so Sorry, I was making an ITYSL reference. I completely agree with you. I don't know what that is. I'm so old, guys. I'm so old. Please remember that I am old. Um, but yeah, so I think that there's this larger conversation to have here, and I wasn't gonna make videos about it on TikTok because it's a cesspool. Like, there's a reason I don't have these discourses on TikTok anymore. I'd rather do them on stream because TikTok, you can't really get a good handle on things. Things become really disjointed. It's hard to follow threads back. It just becomes a mess. And so somebody said, yo, 2 streams. Yes, 2 streams this week. I actually got up to do 2 streams this week, guys, okay? I know. Usually I get distracted with other things, but whew, I'm trying to do 2 streams a week, okay? I just usually fail. I tried to do 3 for a while, and I really sucked at that. But, okay. So, Margaritaville says, not everything has to be for you. Yes, that is true. But okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about fantasy, and I wanted to kind of give some advice from someone who is older, who's kind of been through the ringer on this stuff, who, you know, definitely had a hoe phase. Uh, uh, I had I had multiple hoe phases. I had like a phase where I was like a literal sex worker. And then I had a phase where I was just, I liked getting down, okay? And I'm so sorry to my poor wife who has to sit in here and mod and listen to all my exploits. But I've been around the block, needless to say. So I feel like I can kind of give some advice on this, especially from a kind of a queer angle, because young people are not going to learn about queer culture and queer sex from a lot of people. There just aren't a whole lot of people who are willing to talk about it. And I think that leads to really weird conversations around certain things. So I kind of wanted to use Sabrina Carpenter as a jumping off point, which is we already had this conversation in the 2000s with Britney. Okay? We already had this conversation in the 2000s with Britney. There is no reason to have it again. We already kind of came to a consensus, which is that women are allowed to do whatever the hell they want with their bodies. Okay? They're allowed to be as modest or as immodest as they want. And they are allowed to openly express sexuality, and it's really bothersome to me because so many women and so many queer people over the years have fought for the ability to be open about sexuality, to be able to talk about sexuality, and for this kind of stigma around it to be kind of dismantled, and that has allowed people to get better information about things like sexually transmitted diseases. People have been able to get better information about things like consent. Now that is a conversation that still needs to be had, because I don't feel like we are handling that one effectively. But because people were more open to talking about sex, we were able to kind of tackle these problems in our society on a greater level. And now we are rolling that back. And whether young queer people who are prudish realize that or not, they are rolling it back. They are contributing to the rolling back of being able to openly talk and express sexuality in a more public way. Until I was about 23, I never made friends my age, and it was honestly weird to find that people my age were much less sex positive than my friends who were 10 plus years older than me. Yes, this is not a sex positive generation. It is not. And I found that this generation, weirdly, in both conservative and more like liberal lefty circles, very much views it as a commodity, as something to be bought and sold, instead of something that people engage in with passion and love and desire. And I don't know what caused this. I don't know if it's just that like they're like internet brained with pornography. There's like the rise of the e-girl, you know what I mean? Where a lot of younger people, especially conservative young men, definitely view sex as a commodity. But even on the left, a lot of young women, I feel like, view their bodies as something to be bought and sold. Now, I don't have a problem with sex work. As I said, I was a sex worker. But it almost feels like they see that financial transaction as a way of establishing consent, which is a problem. That is a problem. So we need to have a greater conversation around that. I'm going to take a few notes about what I kind of want to talk about so I can keep myself a bit more organized. I should have done this pre-stream, guys. I'm sorry. Um, um, let's see. So I think what a lot of this comes down to is that young people don't understand consent, because consent is something that's taught. It's not something you know straight out of the womb, right? My wife says Gen X worked really hard to combat all this. It's sad to see society go backwards on it. Yeah, it is. And I think that's why I've been so incredibly frustrated with it. Is because I remember my generation doing a lot to encourage sex positivity. Heather's generation did a lot to encourage sex positivity. Heather and I have a big age gap. So what's really funny is that Heather and we do have a big age gap. She's about 12 years older than I am. And there have been people who've given us shit for that. I am a 33, almost 34-year-old man, okay? I'm pretty sure I have the ability to consent to sleeping with a 44-year-old woman, okay? I do. I do. I have the capacity for that, okay? Yeah, no, people have given us grief for it. Because they're like, that's a massive age gap and she's taking advantage of you. And I'm like, I wish she would do it more. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Yeah, people have called Heather a groomer. It's crazy. And what it comes down to is young people not understanding this shit, okay? Young people not understanding this shit. And so I kind of want to talk a little bit about consent, about things like age gaps, and where things kind of get weird, and where... Because I feel like a lot of young people, too, it's like either perfect sex or sexual assault. And sometimes there's a middle ground that's just bad ideas. Like, not good ideas, okay? Where it's not criminal activity, okay? But it is probably not going to end well in the long run, okay? And so I think that we need to talk more about those middle grounds where things are just kind of a bad idea, where it's not criminal, but it's shitty and not great and probably isn't going to make either person in the situation happy in the long run. And that's where things like, I think, like age gaps and stuff come in, obviously with two people who are consenting adults. Is it criminal for a, 32-year-old man to sleep with an 18-year-old? No, not technically, but it is a bad idea, and it's icky, it definitely falls into the category of mostly immoral, in my opinion. I've never seen something like that end well. I've frankly never seen it end well if somebody in their 30s dates even somebody in their early 20s. But I don't think... Actually, I think I do have a friend who has been married for a long time, and she was pretty young when he married her. And she's kind of just always been into older men. And it's like, okay, occasionally it works out. Most of the time it's a terrible idea. And I think we kind of need to be able to talk about things in that way where it's like, okay, this isn't technically like the worst thing on earth. It's not a crime, but it's also just a bad idea. It's a bad idea. It's got bad optics. It's not going to make anybody in this situation happy. And yeah. I really think a purity culture did a lot to people's psyches. My best friends had a 20-year age gap, 28 and 40 something, and they had a better relationship than anyone I know. One is past now, hence the past tense. Yeah, so like I said, if you are, in your 30s, probably don't be dating people who are in their early 20s. It's just, like I said, it's not going to, it is very unlikely to make you happy in the long run, make either partner happy in the long run. Because you're just at two different stages of life. When somebody's in their 30s, they tend to be a bit more settled. They tend to be a bit more aware of who they are as a person. People in their early 20s, they don't know who the fuck they are yet. They haven't had time to figure all that out. And so you're really just at two different stages in life, and there's a good chance that if you're in your early 20s, you are going to grow into someone that is not compatible with this partner. And that's just how I've seen it go a lot of these times, a lot of the time. So I just generally think it's not a very good idea if somebody's that young and somebody's that much older. You know what I mean? I think part of the issue with this kind of stuff too, right, is that, and the reason I want to frame it as like, this is not a good idea, instead of like, this is bad, you're bad, this is criminal, all of this kind of stuff, because it's not, like, legally speaking, it's not, is because once you like clamp down the hammer on something like that, it tends to make people, it makes the subject taboo. And what you're going to have when you have taboo subject matter is you are going to have people either completely abstain from that subject matter and repress because they're embarrassed, they are scared, or you are going to have people who throw the entire idea out the window in order to rebel against it. And when you have something like age gaps, when you have something like consent that are made into this very like taboo issue to talk about, what you're going to have is people who are terrified of having sex, or people who throw the idea of consent out the window entirely. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. We are seeing a lot of young people either terrified of intimacy or throwing the idea of consent out the window and like following guys like Andrew Tate, right? So I think that the point is to make it less taboo. Forbidden fruit becomes a fetish. Yes, forbidden fruit becomes a fetish. And I think that by making it so incredibly difficult to talk about these things because of the internet, and the way people react to it on the internet and the prudishness of Gen Z, I think that we are turning the clock backwards in a lot of ways on this subject. And that a lot of young leftists on the internet are using like the guise of feminism. Also, here's another thing I think has kind of contributed to this. I think a lot of young lefties have been taught gender theory and like what's the like degree you can get, gender studies. They've been taught gender studies by second wave feminists. um, they've been taught gender studies by second wave feminists, and a lot of second wave feminists had their own hang-ups around the idea of women being overtly sexual in a way that appealed to the male gaze. Now that's something actually that like late Gen X and like millennials really tackled, which is why it's so hard for me to watch all of this happen, where we were like, okay, yeah, it is totally fine for women to be butch, to have armpit hair, to not shave, and it is also okay for women to be, you know, topless, to be like openly express their sexuality, and dress and act in a way that would traditionally be something that kind of attracts the male gaze, and those women deserve to be safe while doing that. And because we kind of tackled it like, okay, yeah, it is perfectly fine for a woman to wear whatever she wants. The problem is with men and with their behavior around women. And because it almost feels like people are like slut shaming Sabrina Carpenter for being like into, obviously, at least like mild, like lightly above vanilla BDSM. That's what's depicted in this album cover, is like slightly above vanilla BDSM. Like we're talking like less than what happens in 50 Shades of Grey kind of thing. 1960s hippies were the most healthy mentally. Around section sexuality, okay, so 1960s hippies had their own issues because the issue of consent still wasn't being as discussed as it needed to be for that level of openness and free love that was happening during that time. So there was a lot of problems, but now I feel like we have the framework to openly discuss consent, right? And we have the framework to have like free love. And so we can combine these things. We can combine what we have learned and come up with a very healthy, loving, consensual, passionate understanding of sex and sexuality that we didn't really have before. And I think with all that we have learned, we can move forward in a way that is really, really good. Unfortunately, the younger people are going to have to get over their prudishness. I remember, so I had a thought yesterday, actually, which is that I remember when I was growing up, because of the internet, we just sat there, and I remember a lot of people my age going, okay, there's going to come a time when everyone has nudes on the internet. Like, and it is not going to be disqualifying from public office, because everyone's going to have that. Like, that's just going to be something that exists where, like, everyone's ass is on the internet. And we did not, and we were like, okay, you know, this kind of opens things up a bit more, you know, to people who have, you know, for example, potentially done like sex work in the past or things like that, to then, you know, have gainful employment in the future. That is not that. You know what I mean? So we were kind of under the impression that that would just kind of be the trajectory of things, not that there would still be a stigma around it. And like, now people just don't have sex. Like, that's not what we thought was going to happen, you know? We could never have suspected that the younger generation would make, what's that fucking guy's name? Alex something? The #1 artist on the music charts. When he sounds like a Christian contemporary artist, man. He sounds like a Christian, like, that's the kind of shit that is happening right now. Like, there is a very conservative mindset around younger people. Yeah, no, and two Christian contemporary artists have um like swept the charts. Like they've gotten on to like the main, like the top 100 at this point. Like, it's crazy. Like, a lot of young people, the straights are not okay, and frankly, the gays are getting to the point where they're not okay either. Um, so, like, that's kind of why I wanted to bring this up. Plus, you know, like I said, we've been having the kink at pride discourse for years now, and it needs to just be like kink is part of queer culture. It's part of queer culture. It's not going anywhere. It is part of what makes gay culture um, unique and special. And is my audio fucking up? God damn it. Shit. Did that help? Is the audio quality better now? Fuck me. Okay. Um. Give me a second. I'm gonna have to fix it. I don't know how to fix it, but I'm gonna try. What is going on? Give me a second. Heather's gonna check the router. I'm gonna go I got a new microphone. Let me see if I can figure out how to plug that in. All right. Let's see. Let's see if we can figure this out, guys. I don't know if this is gonna work or not, so I'm gonna need you to bear with me. I got this new microphone. Somebody on my following list got me a new microphone. Is the audio any better now? Shit, fuck. Okay. Let's see if this works. It may not. And if that's the case, I'll just have to end the stream early and we'll have to get back on this at a later date. Ah, fuck. That's not gonna work. There we go. Now it's better? Is this... Can you hear me? Did the mic solve it? Did the mic solve the problem? I don't even think it's on. I don't understand this thing. Can you hear me? There's no light on it. I don't know if it's working or not. Okay, well, I'm just gonna assume that my mic's working then, even though the light's not on. Let me see if there's a manual. It's in... Okay. All right, well, it... Well, it's working. Okay. You don't think it's on? All right, well... I don't know what to do. You think I'm good without the mic? Okay. All right. Well, that's sorted. Are we still good? Are we still good with the mic unplugged? Okay. It must have been a router issue then. Anyway, I got a new microphone. I need to test it out. Cool. All right. Sweet. We're back on. What the hell were we talking about? Oh, okay. Kink at Pride. Okay, so yeah. Kink is part of queer culture. And I've noticed that around... kink in general is something that a lot of people are very uncomfortable with, which is strange to me because kink was kind of becoming mainstream because of things like 50 Shades of Grey, which, you know, is its own thing, but there was a kind of a push even from more conservative people like the author of 50 Shades of Grey to have this be something that we could kind of talk about more openly. And romance novels and stuff have been a thing forever. And for there to be like less shame around that. Yeah, vanilla kink, yeah. And so it's very, very odd to me to kind of watch these things slide backwards in the way they are. I think a lot of people were very uncomfortable with things like Twilight, with things like 50 Shades of Grey, and their depiction of relationships. Here's the thing. I think a major issue with this, a major conversation we have to have is what you want in a relationship, out of your partnership, out of your you know, love life, is not necessarily the same as a fantasy. And so, like, okay, I think what most people want out of their relationship, like their actual relationship, if they are completely honest, is a friend. right? They want a partner. They want someone who will share the load with them. They want someone who will be near them when they go to bed at night, and who they love and can care for. And I think that that's what most people want out of a partnership, okay? Out of love, out of a relationship. However, we are animals with meat brains, and we also have desires and fantasies that can contradict that. For example, let's just say that there's a woman who is like very, like a businesswoman, right? Like she is career focused. She has a relationship that's a very much an equal partnership between her and her husband, but in the bedroom, she likes to get tied up. So, and it helps her kind of like release the tension of being in a position of power all day. And I think that people don't really realize that what you fantasize about can be completely the opposite of what you actually want in real life. Catharsis, yeah. There are things I fantasize about. I don't know how comfortable my wife is with me getting into all of that, into what we do in our bedroom business, but that are not remotely what I want out of our relationship. You know what I mean? That are very, very different from how Heather and I conduct ourselves in everyday life. And I think that people get very uncomfortable with this idea of fantasy because they're like, oh, well, if you have this idea of fantasy, then people will want that out of a relationship. People will expect that that's how their relationship should be. And I think that God, my shit just crashed. Hold on. We're having internet issues today, man. So I can say that the folks I know who were really big into the books at the time wound up doing kink terribly, hurting each other, and getting Puritan. Yeah. So that's the thing, is that there is no issue with fantasy. There is an issue with people not understanding how to safely engage in fantasy. I think that there is a gray area. There's 50 shades of gray areas. Like, no, I'm kidding. Where people kind of are like, okay, I have this desire, so obviously this is what I want out of my life, out of my relationships. And I think that we need to be having more conversations, not about how like kink is bad and kink should be shamed and kink needs to get out of public life, but how there needs to be kind of a separation between love and play. And how play is not necessarily indicative of love, and how love is not necessarily indicative of play. I think that that is the conversation that's been missing, where it's like, okay, fantasy is fine. It's fine. It's if you want a millionaire boyfriend who whips you and you're his secretary, that is a fine fantasy to have. That is a fine fantasy to have. I don't care. However, you need to be aware of how that will actually play out in real life. There are plenty of people I know who are into things like CNC, who have been assaulted in the past, and CNC is a way that they work through it. And that is their business. That is their business to engage in and to learn how to engage in safely. But I know a lot of people who have engaged in things that way. And I think for a lot of people, it is very helpful and helps them work through their traumas. The people I've known who learned kink from places like Tumblr never really got that distinction established. They didn't properly separate reality from fantasy. Yes, that's why I think it is kind of up to more content creators to be talking about this kind of stuff. Where like there is a separation there, where you, and I think too, like I think of like the tradcasts, right? Like the trad wives, okay? These are people who have a fantasy. Like, it's very obvious that these people have a fantasy, a fantasy that they want to live out, a fantasy where they are, you know, a subservient housewife with a man who comes home from work all sweaty and, you know, takes them, and they have lots of children together and all of this. Like, it's a breeding kink, okay? And that's fine. It's fine for people to have that fantasy. The thing is that that's kind of a different thing than like relationships, and a different thing than like lifestyle. I think actually if these kinds of people were more aware that this is like a play thing that they are engaging in, that they would be happier doing it. Because I think that there would be an awareness of like, okay, this isn't what people are just supposed to be like, right? This isn't just normal behavior. This is an act that I am engaging in, that is an act of fantasy. It is an act of play. I like to dress up with my partner, and I make bread, and then he fucks me over the table. Like, that's fine. Like, that's totally fine. It's okay to do that. It's okay to do that. A lot of kink is processing our subconscious conflict, shame, things we defer and repress. We aren't ready. We already aren't very introspective as a culture enough, so it's not surprising that people are squicked. Yeah. So, okay, honey, no, I'm not gonna do that. That's our little thing. I'm not doing it. That's nobody's business. But there are, like I said, there are things that my wife and I engage in that are definitely like fantasy elements that I will give a little taste. I won't entirely get into it. There are fantasy elements where I like to dress like a woman in the bedroom or act like a woman in the bedroom. Do I want to be a woman in real life? Absolutely the fuck not. I spend $8,000 to be this way. But there are certain fantasies that we engage in together where cross-dressing is part of it. And I think that that is something that people need to be like consciously aware of, where they're like, okay, this isn't something that like I would be happy to do in real life, like, but in this scene, this very controlled environment, this is a play I like to engage in. Play and imagination is healthy for adults too. Yes, it is. It is, and passion is. And I've seen a lot of dispassion. And I think that's leading to a lot of unhappiness, because it's okay. You can have consent and passion at the same time. I think a lot of people just don't know how to do it. I think a lot of people just don't know how to have consent and passion at the same time. Because I think a lot of people go into like intimacy thinking that there needs to be a contract between two people that's signed by both parties, a notary and a fucking priest. And that's just not how this works. You can establish consent in very subtle and very sexy ways that don't kill the mood. It doesn't have to be this weird, sterile thing. Now, if you engage in kink, I would recommend having a conversation beforehand. Um, Actually, I would say a conversation beforehand is absolutely required with kink. And it doesn't even have to be like weird, right? Like, I remember, like, when I was early on in like the kink scene, there were always people having conversations about, like, okay, what are you into? Like, what do you like? What are you into? And then they would say what they were into, and people would be like, okay, here's the crossover. Like, here's where we meet. Um, it's ideally a safe space for brains to work out all kinds of wacky gender things. Wacky gender things, wacky sexuality things. Like, it's kind of, the word psychosexual exists for a reason, guys. Like, we do have things that are kind of subconscious in our lives that come out in the way we engage with sex and sexuality. And so I try to tell young people that there are kind of like 5-word phrases that you can use. Oh, like 4-word phrases, sorry. 4-word phrases you can use to like establish consent, because they're short, they're sweet, they don't kill the mood. Um, Phrases like, do you want me? Do you want me? Like, that is sexy. It can be whispered in someone's ear. Um, and if they say yes, they do want you, then you can go to Pound Town, you know? Okay, those conversations with kink are like half the fun. Like, yes, please tell me about the things you like. Yeah, no, they are fun. They are fun. They are fun conversations to have. You can get silly with it. You can kind of laugh about it. It doesn't have to be a super serious conversation. You can get a little embarrassed, and like, there are things that I've told my wife that I'm like, this is kind of a thing I'm into, and I know it's a little weird, but it is what I'm into and what I like. And she's just like, yeah, sounds great. And we do it, and sometimes she's into it too. You know what I mean? Or sometimes she's like, not as into it, but into the idea of making me happy, which makes her happy. So there's a lot of like give and take on that front too. Like, a lot of experimentation. Do I like this? Do I not like this? Does this make me feel weird? And if something makes you feel weird, I think that a lot of younger people think that if something makes you feel weird, then consent is broken. Consent is only broken if you tell your partner if you feel weird about it, and then they do it anyway. Okay? Or if your partner's not checking in when they notice that you feel weird, right? Like, okay, so here's how something could go. All right, you've had a conversation about how you're into spanking, your partner has never tried it before, they are willing to give it a shot. They have consented to giving it a shot, right? But as you're doing it, your partner realizes they do not like this. They are not into it. Now, if they, like, if you continue after that, right? If you continue after that, then that is a problem. That is a breach of consent. And you should also, you know, if you do it a couple times, you can check in with your partner, and you can use another 4-word phrase. Do you like that? Do you like that? And you can growl it. You can make that hot. And then your partner has the opportunity to say whether or not they do. There are these ways of like checking in and establishing consent that are like very, they can be sexy. You know, they can be sexy. It doesn't have to be this weird, sterile thing where everything is established. There is room for creativity, there is room for experimentation, and there should always be room to say stop. There should always be room to say stop. And That's why things like safe words exist. Do the young people know about safe words? Okay, do the young people know about safe words? I need to know. God, me too. I hope they do too. So let's go ahead and talk about it just in case someone is unaware. Okay, a safe word is a word that is established before a scene. A scene is when you and a partner have decided to go into a BDSM act together, right? You have established that you would like to try this thing together. Um, and so the scene starts, and a safe word is what one would use, and it has to be something completely absurd, something that would never normally be used in the scene. Pineapple is a really common one. And that is, this needs to stop. This needs to stop. You can also have like yellow light words where it's like, I want this to continue. Do it, like reel it back a bit. Like if somebody's spanking and the partner likes the spanking, but they want it to be a little lighter because it's too hard. It's making them not have fun because it's too hard. Then you can have those kind of yellow light words where it's like, let's slow it down, let's back it up, let's do a check-in, okay? And then somebody can say something like, not so hard. You know what I mean? Like, not so hard, or that doesn't feel good there, or, you know, whatever. We can also learn from consent violations and repair relationships. Not all breaches are a death sentence. They are your boundaries to enforce, but I think the traffic light system works for a reason. Yeah, I love the traffic light system. It's very nice. If applicable, it's great to have a nonverbal safe word too, like 3 taps. Yes. If you have, for example, a ball gag, you're not going to be able to safe word because you have something in your mouth. And so at that point, you have to establish some sort of non-verbal safe word, right? And there are certain situations, you know, like things like choking, where you won't be able to safe word properly. So there has to be another way to do that. So yeah, like there's not, like there can definitely be situations where like the scene, oh, aftercare too. I feel like people don't talk about aftercare enough. Like if you are involved in a scene, especially something where like heavy topics or heavy pain are being engaged in, it is good to have a cuddle afterwards, to check in, to kiss one another, to snuggle, to say you love each other. It is good to have that kind of aftercare afterwards. You know, get water, get a cigarette if you need it, things like that. Even if you need to cry, that's totally fine. Like, but there has to be that established, like, okay, the scene has ended. And that has to be for both people who are dominant in that scene and who are submissive. I think a lot of people think like, oh, you know, the only person who would need aftercare in that situation is the submissive. Not always. The dominant is often engaging in things that are aggressive and can make people feel guilt, and they also deserve aftercare and love and snuggles and reassurance that everything's okay. So I do think people need to talk about that. I think that young queer people, a lot of the reason that we ended up, a lot of like my generation and Heather's ended up with kind of like a healthier sexual attitude about things, is because a lot of us did end up in BDSM scenes that, you know, you had like 50-year-old leather daddies who were like teaching you things. I was involved in sex work. I had old trans women teaching me things, you know, and not necessarily through like acting it out, but like through like having conversations like this where I was like learning how to engage with the scene in a way that's safe. Been in kink for a long time. Old guard kinksters have some sort kind of stigma against aftercare, like that it makes you weak or something. Always thought it was bizarre. We all have nervous systems. Yeah, I have not encountered that. Um, most of the, and I'm not saying it doesn't exist or that your, you know, experience with that wasn't valid. I totally believe you. Um, but like aftercare is fucking important, man. Also, the straight kids experimenting in kink seem stuck with a handful of allowed roles. Yeah. And that's the thing is like, okay, you can gender bend in fantasy and have absolutely that affects your sexuality in like no way. Your orientation, your gender identity. Like you can just swap gender roles. You can be a man who enjoys getting whipped. That's fine. You can be a woman who likes whipping men. Like that's totally fine. It's okay. And nobody has to know about it. Nobody has to engage with it. It can be you and your partner and this private thing that you engage in all on your own that is special to you. Okay? Like that doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be a thing. Like, and even if you like want to do something like closer to lifestyle kink, you know, like be aware that that's what you're engaging in, right? Like you have a lifestyle that, you know, but there needs to be moments where like the scene ends still. Like if you are, let's take the trad wife example. Someone who wants to engage in that kind of lifestyle play, which I don't actually think a lot of like the trad community wants to engage in lifestyle play. I really do think that for the most part, this is a fantasy that would like alleviate if they just engaged in it a couple nights a week and then fucked off. You know what I mean? And had like their own like healthy relationship outside of that. Because a lot of these women I've noticed who are these like trad wife types, they have careers. They have careers. They don't actually want that. They are pundits. They are influencers. They are, you know, all sorts of different stuff. A lot of these women want careers. Now, there are careers usually that involve some sort of homemaking as well, but they do want careers and they want to make their own money and they want to contribute in that way to their house. And so I think that there has to be like rules established around straight folks that allow them to engage in that. You know what I mean? So many dudes I met just wouldn't allow themselves to enjoy subbing. It was sad. Yeah, it's okay. You know? Fucking, Sugar Ray already wrote, every morning, okay? Like, pegging is fine. It's been okay since the 90s, guys. Like, it's okay. You can just like that. You can like that. You can like, it's okay. And it doesn't make you gay. It doesn't make you gay. If you're into women, and even if you're into women pegging you, it doesn't make you gay. You can just be into pegging, okay? It feels nice. It feels good. It can be a thing that you're into. Like, you can enjoy being tied up. Like, and you can switch off. There can be times that like you enjoy being the submissive one, and there are times that you can enjoy being the dominant one. And it's okay if you're bi as well. Yeah, it's totally fine. You can just be bisexual. That's okay. That's okay. It's okay to be all of that. I feel like a huge problem is that we haven't allowed, there's no real place for people to explore anymore, other than like online with like fucking subreddits and pornography. And that's not a great place to explore. It's not. Because it doesn't establish rules, and it blurs the line between fantasy and reality in a way that's not very healthy. Switch relationships are underrated. That's what me and my wife have. We're switch relationships. A switch relationship. And it's nice. We have all sorts of fun together. It's nice. Like, that's the thing. I think a lot of young people are learning sex and sexuality from pornography, and that is not the best place to learn it from. It is not the best place to learn it from. I think a lot of people expect that intimacy is going to be like pornography, and that is just simply not the case. That is simply not the case. Even like if you engage in certain types of fantasy, there are going to be like people. Okay, here's something we're gonna break down a stigma. Okay, people fart during sex. Okay, they do that sometimes. Sometimes people fart during sex. It is a thing that happens. It can be something that you find gross, but something that you can kind of just like get through it, have a little giggle, go back. It's fine. Some people find out it's something they're into, and that's fine too. James Joyce, famed author James Joyce, really liked when his wife farted. He wrote many a love letter to her about it. Periods start, yes. Sometimes if you're doing butt stuff, things get messy. They do. Like, these things happen. They happen, okay? And it's not an end all. It doesn't have to be weird. It can just, you can laugh it off, okay? Incidents are going to like this are going to happen during intimacy. Somebody's leg falls asleep. Somebody falls off the fucking bed. Like, mishaps happen, and they are not the end of the world. Okay? They are not the end of the world. That doesn't mean you've messed up forever. It just means a mishap has happened. Bodies are weird, and sometimes those weird things are also hot. Yeah, exactly. Leg cramps. Yeah, people get cramps. They're in uncomfortable positions. They need to switch. Like, these kinds of things happen all the time. It's not going to be like what you see in pornography that is heavily edited. My wife posted a James Joyce quote in the chat. "You had an arse full of farts that night, darling, and I fucked them out of you. Big fat fellows, long windy ones, quick little merry cracks, and a lot of tiny little naughty farties." Oh my god, I need to read this guy then. Okay, so James Joyce's work doesn't actually sound like that. Those are his love letters to his wife. He had a lot, they had a very healthy sexual relationship. Actually, that is a great example. And they loved each other until they died. They did. They loved each other till they died. They were together for a very long time, had a very intimate, loving sexual relationship. And he was very enthusiastic about how much he enjoyed their partnership. I feel like a blooper reel of what gets edited out of porn would be both educational and hilarious. Yeah, because there's a lot of stuff that happens on that set that is not, it is edited to create a fantasy. It is not reality. And I feel like with so many young people learning sex and sexuality from pornography, they don't really realize that that's not how any of this goes in real life. A partnership, yes. Honestly, farting is such a weird. Okay, so this is kind of a side tangent, but like farting in relationships can be such a bonding experience. Like when you get used to each other's farts, like that is there's a point of all of that where you just, it deepens the love somehow, because it's not something you would want to do around very many other people, right? But when you are in love and you live together, it is inevitable that you are going to hear each other's farts. It is, and there sometimes they're going to be really bad. You're going to hear them, you're going to smell them, and there is this sort of bonding experience that happens with getting through that moment together. And laughing about that together. My partner had never had sex with anyone else before me, and he said he was surprised at how much we laugh and have fun. He said he expected it to be very serious. Yeah, that's the thing, is that when you are getting your sense of intimacy from pornography, there is no, the laughter isn't there. The closeness isn't there. The weird mishaps aren't there that bring you together aren't there. And so you just expect that it's going to be this very serious thing that goes off without a hitch. And that's not how this ever goes. Some of our best moments together involve farts in some way. Yes! And I love you so much. My friends that I fart around are the ones I'm keeping forever. Exactly. Even then, it's still people working at their job, which is cool, but different than a social romantic interaction. Exactly. Like, these are people who are paid to create a fantasy for you. That is just the reality of the situation. That's what pornography is. It is people who are paid to create a fantasy for you. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you need to be aware that is what is happening. That a fantasy is being presented to you. It's like, let's say, okay, I need an actor's name. I can't think of one. My mind's gone blank. Say you meet William Shatner, right? You meet William Shatner, and then you're shocked that he doesn't act like Captain Kirk. You know what I mean? Like, these are fantasies that are being played out. Farts connect hearts. So yeah, like I think that really does have a lot to do with it, which is that like people are underwhelmed because they go into these experiences expecting them to be this perfect representation of these fantasies they've had. And then they're disappointed and they're like, well, something's wrong. Something's wrong with women, something's wrong with intimacy, something's wrong with all of that. When really it's just, this is what reality is like, This is what reality is like. There is no fluffer, okay? There's no fluffer when it's just you and your partner. And so it's gonna end up funny and weird and silly a lot of the time, And that's fine. It can just be funny and weird and silly, and it can be it's gonna be different. You're going to get, I think, because there's that expectation and then there's reality, what a lot of people go into these intimate relationships thinking is like, okay, I am disappointed because it didn't turn out the way I expected, instead of enjoying what it actually is. Does that make sense? Like, oh, well, it didn't go exactly as my fantasy, as I imagined it, so it is bad, instead of it didn't go the way my fantasy imagined because this is different and better and intimate and real. Um, and so I think that part of it is just that we got to get used to the fact that sex and intimacy are weird. They're weird. Um, and they can be weird. It's all right for it to be weird. It's all right for it to not go as planned. It's all right if things happen. It's even all right if you go into something thinking you want it and decide you don't. All of that is fine. All of that is fine. Um, it can, it, it is not an end all be all for mishaps to happen. Okay? Um, is just check in with one another. Make sure everything's okay. Um, Laugh about things, mishaps when they happen. Uh, Make sure things are kind of established beforehand, and you can do that in a way that's not weird. Okay? It doesn't have to be a whole big thing. And I think that like a lot of these young men too, like what they want is like, there's a reason a lot of these guys who are like conservative, they have this lifestyle that they live, right? And then they have this like secret life away from their wife and children that they'll live as well. Like, so many of them do that. So many of them cheat on their partners, right? Um, which that I kind of want to get into as well. Um, like, they do that because they don't actually want to admit that what they're into isn't what they expected out of this like relationship that they have, and they're too embarrassed to just tell their wife that they want to be pegged. Like, a lot of men too will like use women as like status symbols. They'll get with a woman that they think their friends find attractive, but they aren't necessarily attracted to her. There are a lot of men I know who, like, from being in sex work, I've always been big, right? And there were a lot of men who they were into big women. They wanted big women, but they were embarrassed to date big women. And that leads to like weird fetishization where it's like, yeah, I'm okay with having this type of person as like a side piece, but I care so much about the opinions of like other men and what they would think, that I am not willing to just simply openly engage in that activity. The same thing happens with trans women. There are so many men who would just be very happy in a loving relationship with a trans woman because that is what they like. But they feel the need to like keep that DL, right? By the way, never date somebody who's DL. Okay, do not do it. Don't do it. It's not worth it. Let those men take responsibility for what they like. Okay? You got to let those men take responsibility for what they like. I do not recommend. This is one of those like, it's not criminal, but it's a bad idea things we talked about earlier. Dating people who are DL, dating people who are closeted. I don't recommend it. It does not tend to end well. And if you are someone who is queer in some way, disclose. And preferably disclose in a place where you have other people around you, but not like a restaurant, for example. I know it can be real embarrassing if he throws a fit over it in a restaurant. but a lot of people won't want to throw a fit in a restaurant, and it's way better than like getting back to his apartment and him finding out you're trans and then him just like fucking killing you and shoving you in a river. Okay, like you should disclose for your safety. You should disclose because it is what will lead to your happiness in the long run. Okay, because if you disclose and this guy finds out and he's fine with it, and he doesn't have any hangups, then yeah, hell yeah, get it on. But if you disclose and he acts weird about it when he's around other people, then you can end the date. And you can end the date in a way that is safe, and you can go back to your car and you never have to see him again. So like I recommend disclosure. Like there was a whole like discourse about disclosure like several years ago about whether or not trans people should have to disclose before going into intimacy. And I always found that whole discourse very weird because I was like, yeah, you should. So he doesn't kill you. Men are terrifying. Like, why would you not disclose? Like, you should, not for his sake, because he should be okay with it no matter what if he's into like women. But you know, some people too, just like the things that they want to engage in, they don't necessarily have a hang up around the bits. It's just not what they prefer, and that's fine too. You know, like some people like a pole and some people like a hole, and it's okay to just not be terribly interested in that. And you can still see a trans woman as a woman and just be like, that is just not something I'm terribly into. And that's fine. Like, some people like big butts too. Some people like tiny butts. People's attractions are weird, and I think it's okay to just kind of be attracted to what you want, as long as you're like respectful and kind to the person that you are engaging with. You know what I mean? But I think you should disclose, and this goes for if you're ace too. I have heard somebody in here, I think in yesterday's stream, had talked about how they got into a relationship with someone who did not disclose that they were actually ace, and then they, you know, had formed this attachment to this person who could not meet their needs, right? And that's not good. That I'm not going to sit here and be like, you're a bad person if you don't tell people, because people figure things out in the middle of relationships. People discover things about themselves in the middle of relationships. But if you know, you should tell your partner. Disclosure is just a good idea in general. Don't keep secrets from your partner. It's not nice, okay? It's not nice to do that. And for things like STDs, STIs, you fucking need to disclose that, because especially if it's something permanent, that can be a crime. If it's something like HIV, AIDS, or like herpes, I'm pretty sure with both of those, people can press criminal charges against you if they end up with those and you did not disclose, because those are incurable. And with HIV, AIDS, it can be like life-threatening. So now that is not to say that people who end up with HIV, AIDS are bad people. I'm just saying, for your good and everyone else's, disclose your shit. Disclose your shit. It's totally fine to do that. And that's why I encourage this kind of openness, because people should be able to talk about this kind of stuff without shame, and people should be able to make informed decisions about what they want to engage in, even if it's a bad idea. I've seen among multiple identities by the third date, disclosure identity seems standard. Yeah. I would recommend it. We talked a little bit yesterday about how there needs to be like courting practices. I would say in my opinion, you should disclose first date. I think you should disclose first date. Now, third date, I don't find unreasonable. I think that there can be some stuff there, but especially like if you're in a situation where you think you might like want to get lucky on the first date, you should disclose. And you need to disclose in a public place where you can stay safe. So yeah, I think that, like, plus, you just don't want to waste each other's time, right? If you're not compatible, you don't want to waste each other's time. And I think that, like I said, third date, fine. If you're the type of people who like to take it slow, if you think that this could end in, like, getting lucky on the first night, you should probably disclose then. I think a lot of people pushed back against the disclosure narrative because they were like, well, men should just be fine with dating trans women. But the thing is that a lot of them aren't, and you're putting yourself in danger if you don't disclose. Like, before escalation, essentially. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Disclose before escalation. Because it's nice to the partner, it's respectful of them to, like, let people know, like, because let's be real, there is a stigma around trans people and trans bodies, and men will either be okay with it or they're not. Women will either be okay with it or they're not. You know what I mean? Like, people will either be okay with you being trans or they won't be. And it is better for you to stay safe and for them to know than to, like, make a fuss about this, And it will hurt your feelings. Like, if a guy seems really into you and then he finds out you're trans and he's not into you anymore, like, that can be really disappointing and really sad, and you should go home and eat a pint of ice cream about it, okay? But it doesn't have to be the end of the world, okay? There's plenty of men who are into that. And the more we push back against this narrative that we should not be seen, then the more men will be okay with that. They will be okay with dating trans women. They will be okay with dating people who are bigger. They will be okay with dating people, even like people with interracial dating. There's still weird stigmas around all of that. Interfaith relationship, there's still stigmas around that. And I think all of that stuff is stuff that you should disclose on the first date. Like, or at least within a couple of them, So yeah, I think that when it comes to all of that, like, disclose for your own safety and for your partner's benefit, because neither one of you should want to waste your time and you should want to stay safe. Like, to me, it's like one of those kind of like no-brainer things, Now, I could see waiting to the third date if you're entirely post-op. Like, if you're entirely post-op, like, yeah, third date, yeah, that's perfectly fucking reasonable. I still think you should disclose on the first date, but I don't find that unreasonable at all, honestly. But yeah, I think that, there needs to be conversation about, like, the difference between fantasy and reality, these, like, more intense conversations around consent, and just kind of, like, the gray areas, like, where something, like I said, a lot of young people seem to think that it is either, like, going to be perfect or it is sexual assault. And there is so much in between those two things, where it's like, there is you know, things like we talked about earlier, age gaps, things like cheating. Cheating is something I kind of wanted to get into. Cheating is one of those things where it's not a crime to do that, but it is a bad idea and it's wrong. It's morally wrong. You should not do that. But I have seen a disturbing amount of young people equating cheating with sexual assault. Because they will say that if you're still sleeping with your main partner, then you are not allowing them to make informed decisions about their bodies, and thus it is sexual assault. No, it's not. It is a dick move, though. Like, it's an asshole thing to do. You shouldn't do asshole things. It is wrong. Don't be an asshole to your partner and go behind their back and see someone else. Okay? Talk about the possibility of opening the relationship if you're that dead set on it. And if your partner's not okay with that, then you need to reevaluate your relationship. Not SA, but there is something to be said for the major risk posed to the non-consenting partner, especially related to STIs. Exactly. No, and that is something we can definitely talk about. Like, that's why I say, like, yeah, it's not a crime, it's not sexual assault, but it is a fucking dick move, man. Like, it is not something that should be encouraged. It should be actively discouraged. You're an asshole if you cheat on your partner, and your friends should tell you that you're an asshole. Okay? They like, men need to tell other men who cheat that they're fucking assholes. And I think that would be pretty effective, actually, if dudes were just like, yo, you're being real mean to your fucking wife right now by doing this kind of shit. You're a fucking dick. And, like, things like leading people on, that kind of stuff. Also, fucking dick move, man. That's a dick move. Don't do that kind of shit. Where you're just kind of like toying with someone, and people do that. Men and women do that. Where they're toying with people, they're dragging them along, because they get some sort of like feeling of being wanted, but they don't actually like the person that they're kind of like leading along in this way. It's a dick move. Don't do that. I'm trying to think of some other stuff. Oh, here's a bad idea. I don't know how many people this will actually apply to who are in this chat. Something that's just a bad idea, not criminal or even necessarily like morally wrong between two parties, but just something that's not going to fucking end well. Do not sleep with someone for a place to stay. And do not sleep with someone who needs a place to stay in exchange for a place to stay. That is wrong, and it never ends well. And for a lot of people, I think it's one of two things: the people who have the place that someone is staying in. There's either this sense of like, oh, this person now is kind of indebted to me, and so I can get this thing out of them. Or there is a sense of like, oh, this poor wounded dove, I can love them into a better life. You know what I mean? And it's not going to end well. And if you're someone who needs a place to stay, like, I understand the desperation, but as someone who's been in that fucking situation before, it's not going to end well for you either. Yeah, if you catch something from a cheating partner, it'd be helpful to have a term for that or something. Yeah, no, I agree. Frankly, I just prefer, it's a dick move. Like, it's a dick fucking move, dude. Like, it is such a dick move. oh, that one is a painfully bad idea. That happened to me and it went super bad. Yeah, exactly. Like, it is just a very bad idea. Do not do that. If you have someone that you are giving a place to stay so that they can get back on their feet, then that needs to be nothing more than a friendship. There should not be any sort of activity involved in that situation. If you are someone needing a place to stay, you should not be involved. Even if you find that you're fucking attracted to one another and you want to kind of get into, you know, that kind of business, you know, it never fucking ends well. It never ends well. And I think that there's lots of things that kind of fit into that category of, like, you know, it's not criminal. It's not something that somebody necessarily needs to be punished for. It's not sexual assault, but it's just a fucking bad idea. And I feel like we don't really have a lot of conversations about shit that's just a bad idea. Things that just aren't going to end well. And I've found that because they are things that don't end well, there are a lot of young people who are like, okay, this must be the same as sexual assault. And it's not. And so there needs to be kind of, I don't know, I don't even know what kind of terminology we could have around things like that. Like I said, I brought up like the age gaps earlier. Where, you know, sometimes that shit works out, but the vast majority of the time it doesn't. So, like, it's just kind of a bad idea, and it can go real south real fast. Things like, you know, like the cheating, and then there needs to be some sort of, like, spectrum that this stuff gets put on, where it's like, okay, this is the most perfect sexual encounter you've ever had, to, like, this is a crime and you should go to jail. Like, and there's so much shit in between there, that's just like going from like, okay, here's something in our relationship that isn't going well for us, but we need to have a conversation so we can fix it, right? Like, to like, okay, we've made a mistake here. We read a vibe wrong. We need to figure out how to remedy this situation in a way that both partners feel safe and can either decide to return to the relationship or not. And like things like cheating, things like not disclosing if you have an STI, things like, and then, you know, over here we have like the criminal fucking behavior side, which is like sexual harassment, sexual assault, getting into like relationships with your secretary and like being like a weird fuck about it, you know, forcing your intern to give you a blowjob in the Oval Office, you know what I mean? Like that kind of shit where it's like, okay, this is a crime. Like, you are a fuck if you do this, okay? And I think that there's just this big long spectrum of things that can happen during intimacy that doesn't really get talked about, and people get real heated about certain things, especially if they've had like bad partnerships in the past. It can lead to people getting heated or getting triggered in ways that they don't expect. And by the way, if you ever hear me use the term triggered, I don't use it like a Republican. I use it in its proper fucking context, which is in the context of trauma. So never think that I'm being like sarcastic about that. There just is not another fucking term yet, because that was the term that was used for that, and then Republicans made it fucking weird. So yeah. I'm not saying anything in chat. Are y'all still here? Or have I been talking to nobody forever? Okay. I just know that there was that one chat that me and you did, Heather, where where we talked to each other, because it was a chat we did together. It was a live stream we did together, and we ended up talking to one another alone with nobody in chat for like a half hour. Which a lot of people were like, that's really cute, actually, that you guys could just sit and talk to one another like that for a half hour. Um, just thinking that like other people were in the chat, you know. And so I just wanted to check in and make sure that my chat hadn't gone out, because I also have Do Not Disturb on. So, oh God, that was really gross. I'm so sorry. That was like phlegm. I'm so sorry, guys. That was disgusting. Yeah, see, sometimes bodies do weird shit. Sometimes you're gonna get like a weird phlegm pile during intimacy. Okay, like that kind of shit will happen sometimes. But yeah, so I just wanted to make sure like I wasn't just down here talking to myself, because like I have Do Not Disturb on since yesterday. There was a phone call in the middle of my fucking live stream, that fucked everything up. So yeah, all right. Well, I think that is probably, shoot, that was as I had asked y'all a question and chat crashed and I didn't get to hear y'all's answer. Yes. Yeah. Heather and I'll have to do another chat soon. Heather's not feeling terribly well today, but we'll have to do another chat soon. Maybe I'll make that one of my super chat goals. You know? Maybe I'll make it a super chat goal. All right. Well, I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this live stream. I'm hot. I'm hungry. And I would like to go eat some lunch and then work on all the work that I didn't get fucking finished yesterday. So yeah. All right. Thank you to Margaritaville, I believe it was, for saying not everything needs to be for you. That is something we always need to remember when we are on the internet, that sometimes something does not apply to you. It is a good thing to remember that. And remember, too, that Bradley, his bike got stolen. We are trying to get some money together to get him a new bike. That would be very nice. I would like to be able to buy him a new bike. So, yeah. Let's go ahead and read. All right. A special thank you to Greg Norwood, Jennifer Davidson, Margaret Capehart, Jessica Bednarek, Ariana, Emma Price, Allison Hill, Lauren O'Connor, Caitlin, Nathan, Morgan Westerin, Eleanor Bucksbaum, Jay Winia, Morgan May, Taylor Condra, River Johnson, Angelini Pellegrini, Faith Benamy, Kristen McSorley, Nikki Lynn Art, Jacqueline Gordon, Devin Watson, Val Smith, Post-Punk Pastor, Pauline Gibson, Lucas Kempe Cook, and John Borg. I really, really, really appreciate all that you guys have done. And a special thank you to those of you who've been here in my Patreon for a really long time. Subscribing to my Patreon really, really helps. So does, tips. Tips have been rough the past couple of months. So it's been kind of hard to get by. That is part of the reason we are moving in Bradley's girlfriend. I do want to, if she's cool with it, like eventually introduce you guys to her on the TikTok. She is quite the character. She's a lot of fun. And, if you guys come up with any questions and stuff that you want to ask on this subject, we can try to cover them in a different chat. I thought about, setting up, at the beginning of every stream, doing, okay, so people have had time to watch the chat. If they couldn't make it last time, they've had time to, get back and watch all the other stuff. Do you guys have any questions from the previous chat? And we can kind of get into that kind of discussion before moving on to the actual meat and potatoes of what we want the chat to be about. I think that would be really helpful for a lot of people. That way, you know, we can kind of follow up if you come up with a question after like stream ends, and then you can ask it then. So I think that would be really helpful um, to the stream on its own. And I can just ask people like, okay, what are your Q&As, you know? All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this stream up. Like I said, any way you can help out, even if it's just liking the stream, guys, please fucking like the stream. It's always nice if you like the stream. Forgive me, to summer school with Pop Pop have sex ed. I've been truant. No. I don't know if TikTok is the best place to do that. I have tried doing that on TikTok before. I don't know if that's the best place to engage with this topic. I think live stream actually is probably the best place to engage with it, because then you can kind of get feedback. Everybody's kind of aware of what's going on. You can go back through the chat log and kind of see what's up. You can rewind the video and see what's up. With the way TikTok works, I just don't think it is the best format for discussing these kinds of topics, which sucks because that is where a lot of the youth are, and they really do need this information. But I just don't think, because so much stuff is just going to be pulled out of context. So, yeah, so, all right. Well, remember, guys, drink water. I have my water right here. Drink water, eat food. Be kind to yourself, to your neighbor, and to the earth. Thank you guys again for everything you do. I hope you have a wonderful day, and God